Hey there, I'm Michael from KodeKloud. Welcome to this lesson from our AWS Cloud Practitioner certification course. In this video, we'll help you build a strong foundation in cloud computing with AWS. So if you want to learn more or go deeper, check out the full course details below, and let's get started.
In this lecture, I'm going to go over the different storage services available within AWS. Now, there's three different types of storage. We have block storage, file storage, and object storage. So I'm going to go over each of these different types of storage, explain when you would want to use each one, what are the benefits, the pros and cons of each one, and then I'm going to go over the matching AWS service that provides that specific type of storage. So now let's talk about a block storage. And Amazon provides a block storage service called Elastic Block Store, or EBS for short. So what is block storage? So with block storage, what it does is it actually breaks up your data into blocks and then stores those blocks as separate pieces, each with a unique identifier. And a collection of these blocks can be presented to the operating system as a volume. So we can take all of the blocks that we want and present it as a volume, which we can then use to create a file system on top of. Now, the great thing about block storage is that not only can we use it to create a file system, we can also present it as a hard drive, which allows us to actually install an operating system and make it bootable. And so I want to highlight this one important fact, which is block storage can be presented as a file system. So you can create a traditional file system with different directories and subdirectories, or you can actually present it as a hard drive and make it bootable. So block storage is the only type of storage that is bootable. And when we cover, file system storage and object storage, you'll find that they're not bootable. You can't install an operating system. You can only potentially install a file system. Now with EBS volumes, you're going to see that you need to make sure that the EBS volume and the EC2 instance are both in the same availability zone. So for a EC2 instance to be able to connect to the Elastic Block Store, they need to be in the same availability zone. So if I have another EC2 instance in a separate availability zone, you'll see that it won't be able to connect. And so that's something to just keep in mind. You might see it on the exam. Elastic Block Stores are associated with a specific availability zone, and they have to be, if they want to be attached to an EC2 instance, the EC2 instance has to be in the same exact availability zone. So let's summarize what we learned about block storage. So block storage is a collection of blocks that can be presented to the OS as a volume. They can be mounted or booted. EBS volumes are within a single availability zone, so you can't have an EC2 instance connected to a block store or EBS volume in a separate availability zone. And instance stores are temporary block storage that's removed when EC2 instances are stopped and started. So now let's move on to file storage. So with file storage, AWS has their own service for this, and that's called Elastic File System, or Amazon EFS. With file storage, we can store data in a hierarchical structure of files and folders. So it's very similar to how you store files and folders within your computer. You can create folders, you can create directories and subdirectories, and then you can store files within those directories. And file storage is accessible remotely. So you can actually have the file system installed on another machine and then take your personal computer or your server and connect to it remotely over the network or the internet. And when you connect to it remotely, it looks just like any other file system. So you can create directories, you can store files on it, you can access files, you can delete files. It's going to look like any other file system that would be local to your machine. Now, the thing about file storage is that it can be mounted. So you can mount a file system from file storage, but it's not bootable. So you cannot install an operating system on it. That's what makes it different than block storage or Elastic Block Store. Block storage, you can actually install an operating system and you can boot from it. You cannot do that with file storage. Now, as I mentioned, file storage is accessible over the network. And one of the great parts about file storage is that you can have multiple users, multiple clients connect to the same file system, the same file storage, all at the same exact time. So it's not like it's one per client. No, you can have all of your users connect to the same file system. So just to recap, file storage services like EFS store data in a hierarchical structure of files and folders. They're accessible over the network. and EFS can be mounted as a file system inside an operating system, but it cannot be used to boot, so you can't install an operating system. So the whole idea with object storage is it stores objects, right? It's in the name. And what are objects? Well, objects are nothing more than files. So really think of object storage as something kind of like Dropbox or Google Drive. It's just a place where you can upload and store files and access them whenever you'd like. But we refer to the files that we store in there as objects. Now, what's important to understand with object storage is that there's no folder structure when you're using object storage or S3 specifically, right? We want to focus on AWS's object storage service, which is S3. So there's no folder structure. You have a flat file structure. Everything is essentially in the same folder. And because of that, object storage cannot be used to mount or boot. You can only use it to store and retrieve files. And object storage is really great for things like logs, storing media files, traces. If you have a web application that needs to provide videos to end users, it would be a lot more efficient to store the videos on S3 or some sort of object storage. That way, it's going to reduce the cost. You don't have to store it on your local servers, and it's much more efficient for that. So with AWS S3, there are different storage classes that you can select from. And storage classes provide a varying level of data access, resiliency, and cost. And I want to go over the different storage classes so that you guys understand what storage class is going to be best for your specific use case. And it's important to understand for the Cloud Practitioner exam. So let's go over the first storage class, which is S3 standard. This also happens to be the default storage class if you don't specify. If you don't specify a storage class, it's going to default to S3 standard. And keep in mind, this is also going to be the most expensive storage class too. So first of all, S3 standard can handle 2 simultaneous availability zone failures. So what happens is AWS actually replicates your data across multiple availability zones. So even if 2 of them go down, it's still going to be available in another one. It's going to have 11 nines worth of durability. And from a cost perspective, what happens is they charge you based off of the number of gigabytes you store in S3 per month. So obviously, the more gigabytes you store, the more you pay per month. You also have a egress fee. So the amount of data that you send out, you're going to be charged per gigabyte outbound. So with S3 standard, this is going to be this is actually the most expensive storage class, but the data is available across multiple availability zones, and the data is available immediately. So as soon as you request it, it's going to be available. So it can be used for web applications or anything that needs your data accessed immediately. Now, if you don't need to access your data as frequently, you can make use of S3 standard IA storage class, which stands for infrequent access. And so the idea is if the data doesn't need to be accessed as frequently, we can make use of this cheaper storage class. Now, S3 standard IA has the same resiliency. It can handle 2 simultaneous availability zone failures. It has 11 nines worth of durability. Cost-wise, it's going to be a little bit cheaper than S3 standard, but the pricing follows a similar model where you're charged per gigabyte stored per month. It's just the rate is a little bit cheaper than S3 standard. And you're still going to have to pay when you send traffic outbound from S3, so charged per gigabyte. But the difference here is you have a retrieval fee. So on top of the egress fee that you have to pay for every gigabyte transferred out, you also have to pay a retrieval fee. It's going to have a minimum duration charge of 90 days. So you're going to be charged at minimum of 90 days for every file that gets stored, no matter how many days you store it there for. And you have a minimum size charge of 128 kilobytes per object. So even if the file is only like 1 kilobyte, you're going to be charged for 128 kilobytes. So this storage class is good for data that is infrequently accessed. So it's going to be a little bit cheaper. But keep in mind, though, if you start to access the data more frequently, it's actually going to end up being more expensive than S3 standard. So you definitely want to make sure that you don't have to access it too frequently, or make sure that the files aren't too small, because if they're too small, you're going to be charged for a larger price based off of that minimum size charge of 128 kilobytes per object. Or make sure you're not storing files for less than 90 days, because you're going to be charged for the full 90 days. The next storage class is S3 One Zone IA, or One Zone Infrequently Accessed. So this is very similar to S3 Standard IA, but the difference is data is only stored on one of the availability zones and not across all of them. So because it's only stored on one of the availability zones, you lose a little bit of resiliency, but it's going to be cheaper. So it's going to be cheaper than S3 standard, and it's going to be cheaper than S3 standard IA. Once again, you're going to have to pay on egress. So for every gigabyte you transfer out, you're going to have to pay. And on top of that, you're going to have the same retrieval fees that you had for S3 standard IA. So really, the main difference is it's only stored on one availability zone instead of multiple compared to S3 standard IA. And as I mentioned, this is going to be designed for infrequently accessed data, and it's for data that doesn't need to handle multiple availability zone failures, because obviously if you store on availability zone 3 and that goes down, well, then you've just lost your data. But keep in mind that replication still occurs within an availability zone. So in one availability zone, it's going to be stored across multiple servers. So it's okay if one of the servers goes down within an availability zone, you're going to still have that data available. So now let's move on to the next storage class, which is S3 Glacier Instant. So this is going to be a low-cost option for rarely accessed data. And you'll see that this storage class is going to have the same exact performance as S3 Standard. And just like S3 Standard, you're going to have a charge per gigabyte egress out of S3. It's going to have a retrieval fee. It's going to have a minimum duration charge of 90 days and a minimum size charge of 128 kilobytes per object. Now, keep in mind, this is going to be cheaper than S3 Standard and S3 Standard IA. So it's very, very cheap storage, but it has a higher retrieval cost. And it's got a longer minimum duration. And keep in mind, the reason why it's called Glacier Instant is even though this data is rarely retrieved, when you want the data, it's immediately available. So you don't have to wait. So you can still use this for web applications where if the user needs to access the some file, it's going to be available immediately. That's why it's called S3 Glacier Instant. So now we're going to move on to S3 Glacier Flexible. So with S3 Glacier Flexible, this is the first storage class where the data isn't immediately available. So you can kind of think of the files as sleeping, and then when you want to access them, you have to wake them up. So it's kind of considered like a cold start. And so if you need to use these files for like a web application, you're not going to be able to do that because you're going to have to wait some time to actually be able to retrieve these files. Now, this is an even cheaper storage than all of the other storage classes that we've mentioned so far. And just like all the other storage classes, you're going to be charged per gigabyte egress. But once again, it's going to have a retrieval fee. It's going to have a minimum duration charge of 90 days. And it's going to have a minimum size charge of 40 kilobytes per object. Now, when it comes to retrieval, like I said, it's going to be a cold start, so you're going to have to wait a certain amount of time to retrieve the data. How long you have to wait depends on which option you choose. That's why it's called S3 Glacier Flexible. So if you do bulk, then you can get it within 5 to 12 hours. Expedited is 1 to 5 minutes. And standard is going to be 3 to 5 hours. Obviously, the faster the option you choose, the more you're going to get charged. Now, during retrieval, objects are actually stored temporarily in S3 Standard IA class while the data is actually being retrieved. So this is going to be the cheapest storage class we've covered so far, and that's because this is the first storage class where the files aren't available instantly. The next storage class is S3 Glacier Deep Archive. So this is meant for data that is almost never needed. So this is going to be the cheapest storage solution, but it's also going to be the storage solution that takes the most amount of time to actually retrieve the data from. So just like with S3 Glacier, Flexible, the files are not going to be available immediately. And like I said, this is going to be the cheapest storage class within S3 because the files are going to take the longest to retrieve. You're going to be charged per gigabyte egress, just like all the other storage classes. It's going to have a retrieval fee and a minimum duration charge of 90 days and a minimum size charge of 40 kilobytes per object. Now, the options to retrieve are standard, which is 12 hours, or bulk, which is 48 hours. So it's going to take the longest to retrieve these files. That is also why it's the cheapest. So if you have files that, maybe are archived from a decade prior or something that you won't ever need unless under very, very rare circumstances, then go ahead and dump it into Glacier Deep Archive. It's going to be the cheapest. Just keep in mind, it will take some time to get those files back. So some people may not know what is the most optimum storage class for their use case, and they could do detailed analysis of it, but AWS has another solution for people who don't want to go through the headache of trying to figure out what is the best storage class, and they have this thing called S3 Intelligent Tiering. And so what this does is it automatically figures out what is the most optimum storage class for your specific use cases. So it'll analyze how you access your files and will figure out the most cost-effective storage class for you. Now, from a charging perspective, you'll get charged for whatever storage class the files get put in. And on top of that, all objects will incur a monitoring automation cost per 1,000 objects. So I know some of these storage classes are a little bit confusing if you haven't worked with them regularly. So I set up this little diagram to kind of walk you through how to select the best storage class. And so the way it works is, first of all, you have to determine, should the files be immediately accessible? So when you request a file, do you need them to be able to be accessed immediately? If that is yes, then you go down this chart and then you take a look and you see how frequently should it be accessed. If you're going to access it frequently, use S3 standard. Remember, that's the most expensive one, but that's because that's for the most frequent of data. If you don't need to access them too frequently in an infrequent manner, then you have a couple of options, and it's going to determine based off of, do you need the data replicated across multiple availability zones? If you do, use standard IA. If you don't, then use one zone IA. Now, if you rarely need to access the data, and I really do mean rarely, so if you almost never need to access the data, then you can go to the Glacier instant. Remember, Glacier is for files that almost never need to be accessed. If you ever see the word Glacier, like for Glacier Instant, Glacier Flexible, Glacier Deep Archive, these are for files that almost never need to be accessed. But with Glacier Instant, when they do need to be accessed, they're available immediately. Now, if you don't need to immediately access them, then you can go down this path, and then you ask how frequently. So if it's rarely, then you can do Glacier Flexible, which is a little bit cheaper. Sorry, not a little bit cheaper, but you can get them a little bit quicker. It's not quite as expensive. Or if you almost never need to touch them, then you go to the cheapest option, which is Glacier Deep Archive. Keep in mind it's the cheapest option, but the files take the longest to retrieve. And so hopefully that helps clear up some things when it comes to storage classes. So now let's recap object storage, and more specifically AWS's object storage, which is called S3. So within S3, objects are just files. And with S3 and any object storage, it follows a flat file structure. So there's no folders. Now, when we do a demo, you'll see that S3 will actually present something that looks like folders and directories, but keep in mind that's just presentation purposes. At the end of the day, the files still get stored in a flat file structure. S3 is great for storing media files, logs, audit reports, really basically any kind of file that you want. And you'll find that object storage cannot be mounted or booted. And there's a variety of different storage classes that can be used to impact accessibility, resiliency, and cost.
If you're ready to take your cloud skills to the next level, don't miss our complete AWS Cloud Practitioner certification course on KodeKloud. With hands-on labs, interactive games, and all the guidance you need to ace the exam, you'll be well on your way to certification. So click the link below to join the course today.